Good morning this morning, my love muffins.
Good morning.
And good morning, my cyberspace love muffins. And good morning, Sue and Susan and Susie and Suzanne. And apparently Sue has to be some part of your name in order to come and participate. Isn't it funny how many Sues we have? Must be a very special name. Know the truth. I don't know about you, but I know that freedom. Or more accurately, I should say, I have known that freedom. And I want it back. I want more. I can picture Oliver and the little, "More, please, Mr. Moore." Which is why I continue dissecting this faith journey. Making sure that faith is more than a word. That we find a way to practice it despite fears and doubts and worries and concerns that seem to be a part of our life journey. And I must say I got a text literally yesterday from one of our snowbirds who just before she left, her young daughter who has 2 small children was diagnosed with cancer and sent me a picture of her thin and bald and sent me a picture last night of her looking healthy and lovely and saying she's cancer free. I do believe, I do believe. So it's walking this journey of this practice of faith and making it more than a word while simultaneously living with the reality of challenges that do in fact worry us. Most of you know I had COVID recently, and as did many people in the church. And my father had COVID. He's very good at keeping his mind set up here. How are you? I'm fine. I'm fine. I've always been fine. I'm fine with COVID. I'm fine without COVID. I'm just fine. So Sunday night after church, I went out to grab a pizza for dinner, come home. He's laid out in the recliner chair going, and I laughed when I first came in, and then I was like, "What's the matter?" He's like, "I can't stop shaking." It's like, "Oh my God, the last time I saw that, my mother had sepsis. You're going to ER. And he said, "No, just wait and call the doctor." And I put my hand on his head, and it was hot. And I said, "Well, let me take your temperature. I need evidence to talk him into it." So I'm trying to get the thermometer in his mouth, and it keeps falling out. And I look at it, it's already 101. So we're going to the ER. Pneumonia in both lungs.
Oh my goodness.
What did he say to the people in the ER? "I'm fine. I'm fine. I feel fine. There's nothing wrong with me. Nothing hurts. I don't have any problems. I'm not uncomfortable. I'm fine." It's like, okay, so there's a fine line between that holding our vision really high and dealing with the reality that we do have a dual existence, a spiritual aspect and a physical aspect. And while I was doing meditation this week, my younger sister Romeo will appreciate this, I'm sure she's watching, Cricket. While I was doing my meditation, an image came to me of when we grew up, we had a swimming pool that my father had built and put in the backyard. And we're always so eager, right, in the summer to get into it. And they would have to empty it out and wash it all down, and then they'd take a little hose from the well, stick it in the pool and fill the pool up, which would take forever. Well, I mean, by the time the water was ankle deep at the drain, my younger sister and I, and it didn't matter if we had to crack the ice to get in it, we were in the pool swimming. We just loved that. And the reverse is true in the winter. When it would freeze over, it was our ice skating rink. And of course, my father wouldn't let us on it until he cut a hole when it was 2 inches deep and declared the ice safe, so we weren't allowed to go on it at all. Right? What child, when you hear, "Don't do this," goes, "Okay," and then doesn't go right down and do it? So I can remember always getting on the ice by the steps. You know, if you fall through, I'm only going to go to the step, for goodness sakes. But how you creep on the ice, you put your foot in there and you kind of let your weight get on it a little bit and see if you hear any sounds, and then you take your next step, and that's what this is like. It's like walking on thin ice. when you have this belief in faith, this power of consciousness, this power of good in the universe, this power of this quantum physics, this law that our consciousness interacts with this unformed substance that has intelligence and that takes form through our life. And we know that if we channel that, I'm fine, I'm really fine, I'm fine, that we really are fine. It will make us fine. And my father was fine. He didn't get the bad pneumonia. He got better really fast. He got discharged really fast. His I'm fine made a major contribution. And when you worry and when you have concerns, and even though you're trying to hold on to that faith idea, it's like walking on thin ice. You believe, but you're never really sure when something's going to go wrong, and then that makes you question, do you really believe, where's God? Is God's presence here? Walking on thin ice. And that's life. But that's not the way we New Thoughters want to live our lives. It's not knowing the truth that will set us free. It's not stepping out in faith, and it's not walking our talk. Now, there's certainly nothing wrong with respecting physical laws in the universe and checking to make sure there's 2 inches of ice before you go walking across it. But we also want to live by superior law, by the law of God and grace and good, because that's life too. And so what came to me in this vision about that's life is LIF, living in faith every day. LIF, that's life. That's the life we want, living in faith every day. That's practicing what we preach. That's walking our talk, living in life every day. And that's really what our spiritual practice is all about, right? We learn the truth of who we are. Then we learn to understand the laws that govern our being. Then we learn to apply them in our daily lives. And finally, a very important part, we learn to be aware that when all is said and done, there isn't more said than done. Because we can all talk these principles of truth, but unless we apply them through our various practices, then we can't open that channel to this flow. That faith isn't just a good idea. That's what we want to grasp, that faith isn't just a word or an idea. It is a consistent practice. So one of my revelations as I was meditating and studying this and talking about faith and the feeling I get when I believe that, and then being worried or grieving or feeling heartbroken or sad for some of the challenges my people have, what came to me was we have to keep a soft heart in hard times, because that's the only way we really are practicing faith and remaining open to this flow of faith. So really, when I'm praying for people, grief is not to be shared. Comfort is. Sadness is not to be shared. Support is. Worry is not to be shared. Faith is. Frustration and anger are not to be shared. Love and compassion are. Keeping our hearts soft at a hard time. That's really our goal in practice for ourselves, and especially as a ministry that is constantly practicing for our people. It's important to validate feelings of pain. But it's also important to recognize our capacity to move through and beyond these kind of feelings, to keep a soft heart in hard times, to keep that faith and carry on. So how do we do that? How do we make sure that when all is said and done, there isn't more said than done? And I ran across a story about a seeker in truth. And it said, a seeker of truth, after years of searching, the seeker was told to go to a cave where he would find a well. He was advised to ask the well, what is the truth? And told that the well would reveal it to him. Having found the well, the seeker asked the most fundamental question: what is truth? And from the depths came the answer: go to the village crossroad. There you will find what you are seeking. Full of hope and anticipation, the man ran to Crossroad to find only 3 rather uninteresting shops. One shop was selling pieces of metal, another sold wood, and thin wires were on sale at the third. Nothing and no one there seemed to have much to do with the revelation of truth. Disappointed, the seeker returned to the well to demand an explanation. But he was told only, you will understand in the future. When the man protested, all he got in return were echoes of his own shouts. Indignant for having been made a fool of, or so he thought at the time, the seeker continued his wanderings in search of the truth. As the years went by, the memory of his experience began to fade as well. Until one night, while he was walking in the moonlight, the sound of guitar music caught his attention. It was wonderful music, and it was played with great mastery and inspiration. He was profoundly moved and drawn to where he heard it coming from. The truth seeker was mesmerized by the musician's fingers dancing over the strings. Then he became aware of the guitar itself. And suddenly he recognized that the guitar was made out of wires, pieces of metal, and wood. Just like those he had once seen in 3 shops, but had thought to have no particular significance. At last, he understood the message of the well. We have been given everything we need. Our task is to put the pieces together and to use it in an appropriate way. Nothing is meaningful or powerful or constructive or functional so long as we perceive it or consider it only as separated fragments. Separated pieces. But as soon as those fragments come together in a synthesis, then harmony flows. So know the truth, and the truth shall set us free. The power of good in the universe already exists. The power of law already exists. The power of thought already exists. The freedom of choice already exists. We don't have to create power. It already exists. We merely have to put the pieces together in an appropriate way. Put them together in such a way that we channel this good that is part of our spiritual heritage. So we merely have to use it, and it's within our providence to choose how and when to use it. That's life. Spiritual principles exist to be used, and these laws of nature become our servants when they are used rightly. So how do we use it rightly? How do we use faith rightly? I mean, the experiential reality after a certain age, probably 1 year old, is we're all walking around in bodies made of bumps and bruises and sores and ailments and illnesses and wounds and sorrows and sufferings. And our minds and hearts have likely gotten a bit bent out of shape as our bodies have gotten bent out of shape. That is life. So how do we cope with our woes and live faith every day? How do we make, just like that swimming pool, no, don't go there, which is automatically a yes? How do we make those things that we want to say no to in our mind, the doubts and fears and worries, when we know what we resist persists? That just saying no is not enough to make it disappear. So I found a little bit of the answer in Walter Mitchell, which is a psychologist, who might help us a little bit with an approach as we practice our faith. In the 1960s, Walter conducted what are now known as the famous marshmallow experiments. Do you know the famous marshmallow experiments? It was adorable video footage. But he used a group of 4-year-olds for the experiments, and then he tracked them all the way through adulthood. But basically, the whole gist of the experiment was he'd bring the 4-year-old in, sit them down, and put a marshmallow on the table right in front of them within their reach. And he told them, you can have that marshmallow now, or if you wait for 15 minutes, you can have 2. And then just watched what they did. In both studies, the children who resisted the temptation were called high delayers. The no equals no group. No, I'm not going to eat it. Actually equaled no, I'm not going to eat it in behavior. Every one of them achieved greater academic success, better health, better finances, lower divorce, lower substance abuse, lower criminal offenses. At 4 years old, this was a predictor of these success ratings. The ones who were delayers and waited for the marshmallow. There's been several research studies on adults about the capability to resist, to form in their mind the idea that I don't want that, I'm not going to do that. And it was shown over and over again that that desire and that practice actually reduced their capability of being successful. Any type of these experiments where they used suppression of thoughts or feelings. And their conclusion was because suppression requires and simultaneously depletes so much of our energy and so much of our mind and our willpower energy. That's the energy we need to channel toward being successful. In one study, adults were simply instructed to try not to think about a white bear. That's all. Try not to think about a white bear. And after completing that thought-suppressing task, they were told to limit their intake of beer during a test because they were going to have a driving test afterwards. Across the board, the ones who were told not to think of a white beer substantially drank more than other participants. So the idea of working to hold a thought away made them more susceptible to substance. In another study, adult participants were asked to suppress their feelings while watching an upsetting movie. So one group just watched the movie. They were encouraged to have and display or talk about any emotions they had. But the other group was asked to kind of suppress the expression of that and discussion of that. And what happened? Across the board, those that were asked to suppress those feelings failed in any subsequent test that they did, whether it was physical, they gave up, so their stamina ran out. If it was a physical test, if it was a mental test, they were not able to perform as well, purely by being asked to suppress their emotions. You know, this speaks to me because I'm a psychotherapist and I've spent a lifetime believing that most of our sufferings have to do with having not lived the truth of who we are, having not spoken the truth of what we think, having not displayed the emotions that were congruent to what we were experiencing. So now let's revisit that little marshmallow experiment. While they were examining the videos, they were quite revealing. The children that ate the marshmallow sat at the table and they stared directly at that marshmallow. Then they tried to use their free will, their willpower, to urge themselves not to eat it. So they were sitting there staring at it, going, don't eat it, don't eat it, don't eat it, wait, you'll get 2. So all of their energy was going into suppressing what they were using all their mind and senses to look at and desire. I do believe we channel some energy in this room. God bless us all. Can you hear me anyway? Yeah. So keep on going. So we already saw in the adult experiment. Oh, they're speaking to each other now. Come on, let's get the energy going. Okay. So we saw in those adult experiments, trying to use our willpower to suppress a desire and a thought does not often lead to success. But in total contrast, the children who didn't eat the marshmallow, the high delayers, they employed their willpower to distract themselves from the presence of the marshmallow. The no equals knower group used a variety of strategies from they put their hands over their eyes, they turned around in their chair so they couldn't see it, they sang songs and made up games, they did all sorts of creative activities to act as if, pretend as if the marshmallow was not even in the room or an option. Those were the kids that were able to resist, and those were the kids that performed higher as adults on every measurable standard. Ultimately, they didn't use their willpower to suppress an idea or a desire or an urge. They acknowledged the urge was there and then used their willpower for strategy. How could they distract themselves from that desire? So here's how the pieces go together appropriately so we can use rightly the law and the power of good in the universe. Any attempt to gain mastery over our troubles, over our worries, over our fears, it's useless. It only asserts the power of our problems and the very implication that they need to be mastered. It's true that what we resist persists. What we put all that energy on trying to make go away only makes it more powerful in our being. The true resolution of our fears and our worries and our doubts, the true resolution of walking on thin ice, rests entirely in the mastery of faith. And one way toward mastering faith, then, is not to ignore or deny or resist those competing thoughts and feelings. When I am worried, when I do wonder, God, where are you in these people's lives? When those thoughts come, we acknowledge them, but we don't put them right in front of us and sit and stare at them. We do everything we can once that happens to acknowledge them, respond to them if we need to, but then to make that strategy, to make a plan, to not give in to them, to find a way to distract ourselves from them. So ultimately what we're doing is we're becoming adept at adapting. We have stuff happen in our lives, we don't like it. How do we become adept at adapting to that? Acknowledging it, responding to it, make a plan to deal with it, and then moving from the hard circumstance to focusing on the soft heart. Put your hands over your ears, turn around in your chair, sing a song, right? Watch a movie, visit a friend. And if you visit a friend, remember, pain is not to be shared, comfort is. So it doesn't mean you don't talk about the things that are going on in your life that are so challenging. But the goal is not to mutually adopt that feeling of grief or sadness or anger or frustration, but to mutually work toward adopting that feeling of hope and faith and support and love and connection. Become adept at adapting. So my little love muffins, your mission this week, if you so choose to accept it, become adept at adapting. Picture those things going on in your head that you immediately go, oh my God, that's a negative thought. I don't want that to manifest. Stop it, stop it, stop it. Picture the little marshmallow there. And as you're saying, stop it, how can I be so stupid? I know better. Just picture yourself staring at that little marshmallow. And no, there's no way you're going to be able to push that away and actually have it decrease. And then immediately begin to shift your attention to, how can I distract myself from overly focusing on that thought? That is life. That is the life that we New Thoughters, that we believers in consciousness want to walk. L-I-F-E. Living in faith every day. Say it with me. Living in faith every day. That's our goal. Soft heart during hard times. We can't go back and make a new start, but we can start now and make a new ending. We are the people. Now is the time, and this is the way. Namaste, my love muffins.